develop some additional input on our vision plan for the town center part of Farragut. I'm Mark Shipley, Community Development Director. I've been working with our consultants here, TSW, and they're going to have a PowerPoint presentation and kind of go through how they got to this point and talk about some of the activity boards that you all will be actually working with after the PowerPoint presentation. And that way we can hopefully get some real detailed and specific feedback from you all on what you see on these activity boards. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to our consultant team here, and they can then start in with the presentation. So Beverly.
Great, thanks Mark. Hey everyone, I'm Beverly Bell and I'm a planner with TSW. And we also have Adam Williamson and Bert Kirkendall here today. So with TSW, we're handling the land use, zoning, urban design, open space, transportation, and implementation for this project. And then we also have another consultant that's been helping us throughout the process, JSNA, for the market analysis and some strategies for economic development. We're really excited to be here today and talk through these draft recommendations, and thank you so much for coming out and giving this final input. So today we'll briefly review the project and talk about what we've heard from the public input process so far. We'll talk about the project goals that have been developed and guided the process throughout, and then also review the recommendations and some implementation strategies and talk through the input activities and the workshop that we have here today. So as a part of this, we started out the project analyzing the study area's existing conditions. So we're looking at the mixed-use town center district boundary. So you can see that outlined in orange. And throughout this process, we've also collected community input throughout the process that I'll review in a second. And that's to really help to make sure that the plan is aligning as best as possible with what the community wants to see for the town center. And then finally, using those two elements, we have drafted recommendations for land use and zoning, transportation, and that ranges really the full range of mobility. So pedestrian infrastructure, bicycle, multi-use trails, streetscape, parking, etc. And then infrastructure, and finally market recommendations. And this is our timeline. We kicked this off last summer. Maybe a lot of you came to our first public meeting that was around August. There we presented our site inventory analysis and got some more public input that helped develop those goals. We did a survey following up after that, and that helped us create the draft vision plan recommendations. And then I hope maybe a lot of y'all also took our survey about a month or so ago, and that helped finalize the recommendations that we'll share today. So for our community input, we've done the 2 public kickoff meetings. We've done 2 meetings with our steering committee throughout the process. We've talked to over 30 different stakeholders. We've done 2 different public surveys, and today we're finishing up with our 2 final plan open house meetings. So this is a summary of what we heard of what people want to see for the town center at these preliminary community input strategies. So with the kickoff meeting and the survey, number 1. So people want to see safe pedestrian connectivity, especially focusing, we heard a lot about Kingston Pike and the traffic and not feeling safe on that road, and then also Campbell Station Road as well. So going along with that, we heard a lot about the traffic, that can really stack up on some of these main roads and figuring out strategies to help improve that. Also new parks and gathering spaces, a variety of shops and restaurants that can be sustained. We heard that it's difficult to keep restaurants sustainable and afloat in Farragut because of high rent costs and a lack of daytime users to support those throughout the years. And then more entertainment options. We heard that there's not a great large event space that could accommodate things like weddings or larger meetings over 200, for example. People want to have a more extensive multi-use trail system and enhanced streetscapes, and that's anything from tree-lined streets, outdoor dining, and street furnishings. And then a mix of uses that include residential. And then overall, just creating a better sense of place. You already have that going on in Farragut, but how can we amplify that? And then finally, a boutique-style hotel with the strategy of creating it for having amenities like gym and restaurants, bars that appeal to locals, and then helping also provide that daytime population to support those restaurants long-term. And then finally, improving safe routes to school. So we've summarized the results that we heard from that second survey. So this was in response to the draft recommendations, and we received over 1,000 survey responses, which is a great turnout. And thank you if you did fill out a survey. These have been really helpful to make sure we're tweaking and making sure that our recommendations are aligning with what the community wants to see as best possible. So we've divided these results into high support, moderate, and low support. So the recommendations that got high support, we're seeing over 60% of responses were in favor of these, were the mobility improvements, multimodal greenways and sidewalks, and then art and landscape throughout the town center. For moderate support, the one that got that one, which is the town center plan overall, and it was still mostly in favor. It was 44% in favor, but getting more at that, it was kind of half and half, where 41% were not in favor. And then for low support, the two that had the lowest support were the Mayor Ford property, where it had 34% in favor and 51% not in favor. And then Allen property, which had 36% in favor and 49% not in favor. So as a part of that survey, you were able to fill in why you weren't in support or if you had more comments. And the biggest concerns that we heard from these scenarios were that people were worried that with increased development, it could increase traffic, and in general, it would just be too much growth that they didn't want to see, and then cause pressure on existing infrastructure in the school system. And then another desire to keep the property as it is today. So we've looked at those concerns, and you'll hear a little bit of that once we get to the recommendations of how we're addressing those. Next we have our project goals. So we shared these at our first public meeting, got feedback, and tweaked them a little bit. But these have helped guide the process and the recommendations throughout the past few months. So goal number 1, and these are kind of also in ranking order of how much support they got at that first meeting. So number 1 is improve connectivity and safety. Number 2 is create more public spaces to gather. Number 3, create a sense of identity with placemaking. And number 4, generate economic activity and investment. And that's kind of going back to what I was saying about promoting enough day and nighttime activities, support the success of existing and future restaurants and retail. And number 5, encourage high quality development. And 6 is promote mixed use to create a destination. I'm going to pass it over to Adam, who's going to take you through the recommendations.
Thanks, Beverly. Adam Williamson with TSW. We're excited to talk about the recommendations. We've been going through this process and tweaking and changing as we get feedback from you guys. And so I'm just going to run through these recommendations. The first 3 really all tie together. The first one we talked about is improved mobility and safety. Kingston Pike has a lot of high-speed traffic. And so how can we look at making that safer for pedestrians, bicycles, and people who are driving, and Bert will talk more about that. And also, we heard a lot about tree-lined streets, and we'd like to see more of that, and also the greenways and sidewalks and how to make safe routes for the local residents to move around. And then the next one is promote art and landscape. You guys already have a great place here in Farragut to live, but how can we make it a little bit better with art and landscape? The 5th one is how do you promote high quality future development in the town center area? And I wanted just to clarify that we're not promoting development. We're just saying if development happens, to make sure it's high quality. You already have good design guidelines in place. You get a lot of brick facades and nice landscaping. So how do we continue to do that? And then the last one was create a multifunctional central gathering place. And we'll see some images of how that could be, how it could relate to Town Hall. This is what we've been hearing through the process, the survey, and all the public meetings and stakeholders, what people would like to see as far as commercial amenities, casual dining, having more options, maybe some cocktail bar, some general merchandise, more local-oriented retail. That open lawn I mentioned earlier that could be a flexible outdoor event space where you can have concerts and other activities. Shaded seating areas. We all know it gets hot here in the summer, so those trees are important. And also a plaza with a fountain. And as far as the residential scale, townhomes, small lot, single family, and live work. If you can imagine an accountant working on the bottom and then living above, or some other type of service-oriented component. So what we did was we looked at really 3 development areas that are really undeveloped. And you know, we're not promoting development on these, but if it was to happen, we wanted to get an understanding of what you guys would like to see. And some of the answers we got in the survey was like, we don't really want to see anything, which is understandable. I agree, it'd be great for all those properties to stay as is, but it's likely not realistic in the long term. Maybe it's 5 years, 10 years, but at some point there could be development. On the Ford property, which you see on the south, I'm going to walk around a little bit, use this laser pointer. I've been waiting for this. This is the Ford property, the Allen property, and the Concord Road property. So we're going to zoom into these areas. And we've been making changes to these as we get feedback to figure out what would you guys like to see. But this is an interesting slide because it shows what the current zoning by right that the owner can do without, you know, they can just build this. And so a lot of people don't understand this. You guys, most of you probably understand this, but this is commercial in red, office, and then residential in the back. So they don't really have to do anything. They can just go build this. And the other interesting thing is for the commercial, it's 13 acres here, and it allows 70% lot coverage, 35-foot maximum height. So this here could take anywhere from 200,000 and 300,000 square feet of commercial, likely big box. Could be a Home Depot is 100,000 square feet. It gives you some scale of what type of development can be built by right. And then we have office here, and some of the things that we heard were this neighborhood and people in Colonial, Glen Abbey here, they're not really interested in having office. They want single family that abuts their neighborhood. The other thing that this type of design would do would be creating more traffic with a lot of retail. It also would create siloed uses. So if you live here, you're not going to walk here. You're going to drive because it's not a mix of uses. So it generates more traffic. And there's really no green space designated in this area, no trails designated in this area. And so this could just happen. So what we've been trying to do is talk to the community. If this was to be developed, what would you like to see? What could it be? And so this is what we call a bubble diagram, but if you look at the legend here, you can see commercial, event space, boutique hotel, sixplexes, townhouses, single family, and then green space. And all this is kind of mixed together in this area. Here's the town hall, and there's a town green in this area with commercial and a boutique hotel and event space. We kept hearing people want that event space Beverly mentioned for local events, weddings, those types of things. And then a trail system. This green line shows a well-connected trail system that could connect over to your existing trail and expand where people can enjoy and walk around, the locals can walk around the city. And we try to integrate green space throughout the site. We also wanted to make sure that single-family residential abuts Glen Abbey in here and not have a commercial office use. And so those are some of the things that we were thinking about when this plan was drawn. It's like it's 6 units in one building. It could be like a condominium. We have very little of that on that. It's just that. So there'd be like 3, so mostly townhouses. And the other critical piece here, there is no apartments. We heard that loud and clear through the process. So none of these plans shows rental apartments. And so this would be an example of the town green area on the Ford property where you have retail on the bottom, potentially office above. This is the boutique hotel. You see some of the chimneys that you see in historic buildings. Amphitheater or stage area, that flexible lawn that people were talking about, restroom facility, playground, a shady area, and this is a shared street we'll show. So this sidewalk takes you straight across, and then that's your town hall is located here. So it has a good relationship. Historically, you would have a town hall and a green space with that type of relationship. And this is just a view, if you're walking through the green space, looking at the stage, if there was on a Saturday you have a band and community and families could gather. This is a view sitting in the park, looking across at the event space and the boutique hotel. Again, you probably recognize the chimneys that relate to some of your historic buildings. And this is the shared street at Town Green. So this is a flexible space. This allows cars to come through most of the time. But if you're having an event, maybe this is a food festival or an art festival, you can shut that down, extend the park, and have tents and setups to host events. And so this is at Jamestown going into the Ford site. If you made improvements with a new street, you could have a restaurant with a rooftop bar or restaurant on top that relates on the nice days to be outside. And the other thing and we were looking at is how do you have wider sidewalks for more walking and outdoor dining on some of these streets. The other property we looked at is the Allen property. And again, this is showing the current zoning, the by right, what the owners of the property can do. So right now it's mixed use. And you can see the property in blue here. You can see the green space, the creek, and it's 80% lot coverage. That's pretty high. It's 4 stories, minimum 2 stories. And so this allows a variety of uses. So it could be commercial, it could be residential. And so we started looking at this and getting feedback of what this could be. And so we tweaked it, showed a trail system that could connect in this green space, connect over. This is a street. One of the big things is the connectivity the more connectivity you have, the less traffic you have. There's the grid that you have in most historic towns that disperses traffic. So we're looking for opportunities to show more connectivity. This is mostly just townhouses in this area, no commercial. Frankly, commercials will be very difficult because there's not very good visibility. How many acres is that? That is, I'll go back. So it's 16 acres. And so the last piece that we looked at as future development is the Concord Road site. Again, it's commercial up at the top here, and it has office here. Some of the feedback we received is the people that live here off of Highland don't really particularly like the office adjacent. They wanted something more compatible. And they also want to protect the creek that runs through here, Turkey Creek, I believe. So what we looked at is trying to create a multi-use trail system that connects to this overall system that we've been talking about. Residential townhouses would abut the single family. We keep this commercial as is, and then think about street connectivity where possible, and then think about how to reduce speeds on Concord. It's fairly high speed traffic, and also protect this creek, pulling development off the creek as much as possible, and making this a great space. One of the other recommendations we talked about was art and landscape. And I think a key recommendation here is the future is to create an arts and culture master plan where you can figure out where art could go and do something that's unique for Farragut. And also support the wayfinding study that's underway. I think that's a good way to make the town centers unique. And so I'm going to turn it over to Bert to talk about mobility.
Great. I'm Bert Kirkendall, the engineer on the team, and based in Chattanooga. And really, with the existing conditions, we looked at safety, we looked at connectivity, both driving, also walking, biking, and some things really began to pop up at us. Obviously, there's a lot of traffic. That was no surprise on Kingston Pike and Campbell Station. Intersections, of course, that's really amplified at intersections. That's where congestion happens. But also, we walked around the site and realized it's not easy crossing Kingston Pike. These are kind of some scary situations, and we saw a lot of kids out there coming out of school on Kingston Pike. And we looked at the sidewalks. There's pretty good sidewalk connectivity. That's the yellow lines. But we noticed that they're typically not super wide, and they're right adjacent to the street. So you've got traffic kind of blowing through 40, 50 plus miles an hour, and kids and people walking like right there next to it. So it's not really an inviting place to walk. Also not a super safe place to walk. And that's really represented in those yellow dots. Those are crashes that have happened with serious injuries. So people are getting hurt out here in the town center area. But there's a lot happening here. So a lot of this is looking at how can we create a balanced system that's inviting and safe for everyone to use, whether you're driving, walking, biking, whether you're going to school, walking for exercise, walking to shop. If you live in the town center, being able to move around, and especially crossing some of these kind of barrier roads like Kingston Pike. So things really popped out as recommendations, intersection improvements. Those are key spots. That's where congestion happens. So what ends up happening is you keep adding turn lanes. Well, that makes the intersection wider for crossings. It helps congestion, hurts pedestrian access. So how can we balance that? New street connections. Adam mentioned connectivity. Connectivity is crucial because it creates a multitude of ways to move through an area instead of creating these traffic pinch points like Kingston Pike and Campbell Station currently is. Everything comes there, and it's a very aggravated pinch points. We're looking at how can we have a better street connection. If you zoom out from the town center area, there's not great connectivity in Farragut. The streets that connect all the way through, east-west or north-south, they're about a mile to a mile and a half apart. And so that really puts all that pressure on those few streets. So we're trying to keep that from happening within the town center. Traffic safety, we want traffic to move, to flow, but we want to help cars go the speed limit instead of speeding through this area. Tree-lined streets, outdoor dining, street furniture. So those are important pedestrian amenities, but also they're cues to drivers to realize I'm not just humming along here, I'm coming into something different. I'm coming into a pedestrian zone, into the town center. So they're visual cues. So we looked at connectivity and have some, lost my connection. Have some specific recommendations. I'll verbally describe it while we get reconnected. So some of the big ones are within the new areas that can develop, making sure that those do connect well in multiple directions and connect to existing neighborhoods and to future neighborhoods. But also a very kind of more specific location is the entrance to the Ford property, making sure that aligns with existing Jamestown Road, and that Jamestown can be signalized, and also where Jamestown connects with Campbell Station is signalized. So that creates another way to move through that area, because right now the eastbound left turn, if you're on Kingston Pike, turn left on Campbell Station, very aggravated. As you know, the left-hand turns back way, way up beyond 200 feet. And the city's actually done a traffic study on this area to look at what would happen if there were a signal at Jamestown, at Campbell Station, and how could that help traffic move more freely without as many pinch points and backups. makes a huge difference, but also it's really crucial for accessing further development along the street. But also, in addition to that, looking at, well, we want to make sure that there aren't speeding issues on Jamestown itself. So how can we make sure Jamestown is engineered for safety and for traffic calming? So we have some ideas on that as well. So we did a pretty detailed schematic design for Kingston Pike, looking at where sidewalks can be moved away from the street, where these protective buffers can be put in, street trees, and a really big thing is, or medians, landscape medians with trees. For one thing, they really make a corridor look beautiful. It increases the aesthetic appeal, but they're very traffic calming too. With the current street section, the middle lane, it's called a continuous two-way turn lane, AKA suicide lane, because you never know when someone's coming against you or turning. So it's kind of a mosh pit, of an area. So the idea with the medians is you create that friction that is traffic calming, but also you really have these designated left turn lanes at intersections, at key entrances to places. It's something called access control. It really increases safety, not only for traffic flow, but making sure that people can come in and out from the primary street with safety. This is the same footprint, so the curb lines have not changed with this. So no right-of-way would be required. So to look at how that would look like and feel, this is the intersection of Kingston Pike running this way. I guess I could use the pointer. The Kingston Pike. And this is looking south into the Ford property. This is looking north into the existing Jamestown Boulevard. So, some things to really note are these buffers, wider sidewalks, buffers between the sidewalks and the street. You've got medians, still have turn lanes. We've got accentuated crosswalks, and then kind of zooming in to what that looks like and feels like as a pedestrian. This is an inviting space to walk, unlike, the current situation. It's a sidewalk and it's good. It's really good that it's there. It's important. But it's kind of a placeholder until something that's truly inviting to pedestrians can be developed. There we go again. But also, creating spaces that also goes to the development types that go in. So buildings that front the street where there's patio seating. You can see people as you come in this district. You see the building fronts. It encloses the roadway. You see people on the sidewalks in the cafes. And it just creates a different environment that is very pedestrian inviting. So we've got detailed boards. Really would love you to come over to look at some of the specific recommendations after the presentation, to look at, we have sections for all the streets. Love to get your input on those, on Kingston Pike, on the medians, the connectivity. Also, we've got proposed greenway connections extending along the creeks that can connect all the surrounding neighborhoods to the town center, so that people that live around, they don't have to drive to it. They could bike to it, they could walk to it, but also creating real amenities for exercising and moving about the city.
So the final piece that we want to talk about today is implementation. So as a part of our report, we're going to put together an action plan that will phase all of these big projects and goals and recommendations. So what we've done is we've broken those out into the 4 different categories of mobility, future development, placemaking, and then economic development. For each of these projects, for example, for the mobility projects, we've broken each of the streets out into their own project. We'll provide estimated costs and a range, phasing, potential partners and responsible parties, and then also funding sources. So these are a lot of projects. These are a lot of, and these can take a long time sometimes, and a lot of money to get implemented. So it'll be key to think about how these should be phased and work together to create this bigger picture. For the cost ranges, that can go anywhere from staff time to the lowest monetary value, which is $10,000 to $250,000, and then that range can go all the way up to $4 million. A lot of these street projects, they do cost a lot of money. It requires sometimes looking at TDOT grants that can take a while, so they can get bigger. And then the phase ranges, oh my goodness. Did not do this at our first meeting. So this is a new challenge. I'll just keep talking. The cost ranges, or the phasing, that's anywhere from in-progress projects to near-term, which is 0 to 5 years, midterm is 6 to 10 years, and then long-term is 10 years plus. So this is a bit of a longer range plan that's going to require phasing and looking for grants and different funding to make it happen. So today, for our workshop activities, we have these set up around the board. We've got the future development boards. Those are focused in this corner, all of the green ones. We've got the map plan that shows the 3 different sites and the ideas for that. And we'd like to get feedback on your top 2 favorite projects. So I just mentioned these implementation projects. So also as a part of this, we want to collect feedback on what the highest priority is, and that helps signal to us what projects should be detailed out a little bit more, what should be more near term, because those are the most important projects to the community. Here are all of the mobility projects. So again, we've got a map board that we'd like you to take 2 pins and pin those into your most favorite projects. We've got the full concept plan for Kingston Pike on this middle board, and then Campbell Station as well. And then we've got street sections for all of these roads that we've mentioned today in more detail that Bert can walk you through. And then over here, we also have general comment boards for both of these sides that you can add a comment of what you like or don't like. And then over here, these blue boards, we have implementation projects. So for these, we'd like you to grab 3 green dots and add those on your priority implementation projects. Thank you so much for coming today. This final input is really important to help us wrap up the project. We'll take the input that we receive and make those minor, if we need to, minor updates to the framework plan, and then help us designate those priority projects. And then after this is finalized, the town will post the final master plan document to the town website. This whole meeting is being recorded, so it'll be on the YouTube website of the town, and then also the slide deck will be on the town's website. If you have any additional questions, this is my email, and then also Mark with the town's email as well. But we're going to go ahead and break out into our activity session. So if you have any questions, you can come up and grab us. But thank you again for coming.